Welcome to the Art of Procurement podcast with your host, Philip Eidson. Here, thought leaders share the trends, strategies, and tactics that you can use to elevate the role of procurement and your career.
Hi there, everybody, and welcome to this week's Art of Procurement Friday show. I hope that you're having a great week, that it's been safe, healthy, and productive, that you're achieving everything that you set out to achieve on Monday morning. So this is the third Art of Procurement Friday show. The show is intended to be much shorter in duration than the Tuesday show, which typically features an interview with a thought leader within the procurement community. Today's show is more for you and I to connect and to cover a number of different topics. So an example can be to look back at news of the week that impacts our profession that I come across and think it's important to share. Or a look behind the scenes on a particular episode, maybe some additional thoughts on a show that I've had the previous week. Another thing that I wanted to do in these shows was to cover listener Q&A. One of the benefits of the show is that I get to hear questions from listeners from all around the world. And I try and answer as many of those as I can, and if I can't answer them directly, then I look to go to a subject matter expert that's in my network that I know who might be able to help the listener answer the questions where I can't. And so I recently received a couple of questions from a listener in South Africa. So here is a summary of the email that I received. So the question was, I recently started working as a buyer for a multinational company. I'm trying to learn as much as possible and to gain as much experience as possible about procurement. I have limited experience, and unfortunately, I'm the only buyer at my company's branch in South Africa, so it's difficult for me to get the correct exposure to the field of procurement. Thus, I have to learn myself and do my own research. I have two questions. One, do you have any tips for an individual such as myself, who's a beginner, when it comes to procurement? And two, how can I become part of a procurement community? I've joined various groups and blogs, but are struggling to actually feel part of the discussions. And so those are two great questions, and let me try and answer them one at a time. So the first question was related to, tips on how, as a beginner in procurement, how can you start to get the knowledge that you need to be effective in your role, but also to start building and growing your career. And there's a lot of great content out there related to the field of procurement, but there's so much so that I know it can be hard to know where to start. So the most cost-effective way to start, I would say, is going to a site like Procurious. So Procurious has a great knowledge base of videos which really give brief introductions to the concept of procurement, all the way to more expert-level information. You can go there, and those videos are free of charge. Have a search, see what you find that resonates with you, and just start listening and watching some of those videos on the site. And what I'll do is I'll post the links to everything I discuss here in the show notes so that you can go and check them out yourself. And those will be at artofprocurement.com/15. That's artofprocurement.com/15. So while a company like Procurious has a lot of free videos, which are good starters, there's also companies who offer paid courses, and those are also online courses. You can go to somewhere like Udemy, which is more general training, so there may be a couple of procurement courses within it, but a company that has online training dedicated to procurement is Next Level Purchasing, and they have a bunch of online courses that you can pay for and take right there on the website. That's Next Level Purchasing. Again, I'll link up to that in the show notes. Another good area of information is conference presentations. So a lot of conference providers will often put their presentations or content from the presentations online after the event has taken place. And they do it to showcase some of the discussions that took place at the conference. And I found that those cover content all the way from beginners to masters, and there's often some really good insights into how other companies have actually gone and addressed particular procurement challenges. So it's really interesting to learn to see what other companies are doing in our space just by reading those case studies, those slides that make up the case studies. Now, you can just search for procurement conferences in Google and see who comes up. There'll be different ones based on your geography, but frankly, the content is relevant whether you are in the States, whether you're in South Africa, whether you're in Europe, wherever you are. A lot of the concepts are the same. A couple of examples are SIG, which is Sourcing Industry Group, or there's ProcureCon or Procurement Leaders. Those are three big conference providers in the space. And also, actually, Procurious has their own conference and materials related to it as well, which, again, I will link up to all of those in the show notes. Another approach you can take is to approach somebody else in your company, but that's in a different location, to be a mentor. And that's often a great way of both networking within your company and to different locations, but also connecting with people who, they have a shared interest. They want the company to succeed. They want people within their organization and the department to succeed. So it's not out of the question for people to agree to be your mentor, to help you with specific questions, both related to the procurement as a profession, but also to your company itself and how to kind of navigate a lot of the roadblocks that may be in place in your company that are specific to your company. Another example is to join an industry association. So as an example, for South Africa, there's SIPS. So as a member of SIPS, for example, they have a really extensive knowledge base that you'd have access to. They have their own training courses, they run events, they have a monthly magazine. So that's a great way to kind of keep up on what's going on in the space, and also to start building relationships with people local to you in the region that you're in, and obviously in your case, that's being in South Africa. Finally, and I talked a little bit about industry conferences before, but see if your company will pay for you to go to an industry conference, and that allows you to start meeting like-minded people. They understand more about the industry's trends and the thinking, and a good way to network, but it's a good way to consume a lot of information and just to kind of understand what their thinking is. As I said before, when I was talking about looking at old conference presentations, the range of content really goes from beginner to expert. So you can pick the presentations or the classes, the master classes, that really speak to where you are on your procurement learning journey and what's of interest to you and what's relevant to you in your role. And an example in South Africa would be Smart Procurement World, which is a conference that is produced in conjunction with SIPS. The second question is, how can you become part of a procurement community? Well, I've always found that being in a community is far more beneficial when you've talked live or face-to-face to somebody, rather than it just being kind of an online relationship. Following blogs is great for building your knowledge, but obviously it's hard to interject yourself in the conversation. What I would say is, for online procurement communities, if you haven't checked them out, and I know that I've mentioned them a couple of times, and I promise there's no, I get nothing in return for saying this, but Procurious is actually a good community of just related to procurement professionals. They have almost 10,000 members, and it doesn't have a lot of the noise that somewhere where like LinkedIn does. It doesn't also have the numbers. So just look at starting by posting some questions, joining in with discussions, connect to as many people as you can. What I would say is very important is to personalize invites when you start connecting with people, because people are far more likely to start engaging with you if you personalize it rather than it looking like you're just trying to collect as many connections as you possibly can. But what I've found about Procurious is that people that are there are much more likely to engage and help than on LinkedIn. Now, the same people are on LinkedIn as they are on Procurious, but Procurious just feels more like, a hub of procurement people rather than a much more broader networking and career-focused site that LinkedIn is. Secondly, see if there's any meetups related to procurement in your community. And if there isn't, then start your own. So as an example, go and search for people in your local area that are in procurement and invite them to a meetup. I'm going to link to a great post that talks how you do that. It's not specific to procurement, but it gives a good step-by-step kind of guide to getting one off the ground. You can use a tool like Meetup itself to organize something like this, but then search the network of procurement professionals on LinkedIn or Procurious, for example, that really fit the kind of people that you're wanting to connect with and that you're wanting to learn from. You can also do that with members of industry associations, like I talked about joining SIPS before. And just start inviting people to a meetup. Pick a location, pick a time in your home city, invite a few people. I would say start small. Try and get, let's say, 5 yeses from people in your community to meet up to start with and have a first event. and just build it from there, start from there, and you can start building your own community within your own city. And that's a great way to start connecting and networking with people, because if that takes off and is successful, if nothing like that exists in your city, you can be sure that over time it's going to grow, and you're really going to benefit from that, as will everybody else who actually joins that meetup. An alternative to the meetup is to create an online group, and you can call it a mastermind group, but it's basically a group of like-minded people, again, probably 4 or 5 people maximum, who all connect at the same time, and you do it rather than doing it in person. You do it using Google Hangouts or GoToMeeting or Skype or something like that. But it's important that it's video, and it's just a way to connect with like-minded people again and do it all in the same place, but you are talking face-to-face. You can use the same methods to find people as you did with the meetup, although of course you can broaden the geographic location, because no longer does it need to be just focused on your city or your community. You can open it up to your state or county or province. You can open it up to your country, or you can even go further afield. What's important is to get people who are like-minded. And also I'd recommend, people who just got a little bit more experience than you. I think if you shoot for people who have who are much further on their procurement career journey, then it's probably going to be more difficult to engage with them. But if you look at inviting people who, maybe they're 2-3 years ahead of you or 5 years ahead of you, but only a career step or two ahead of you, those people are much more likely to agree to being this kind of community. Now, how these work is that you have an online meeting, takes place once a week or every couple of weeks, really whatever works for the group. And in each meeting, a member takes the hot seat, shares a challenge that they're having, and it can be related to their career, it can be related to something specific at work. And the wisdom of the collective crowd, so the group helps talk through that solution or talk through the problem and helps you to come up with solutions based on their experience. It's a great way for everybody in the group to learn from each other. So there's mutual benefit from everybody who joins a mastermind group such as this. How you structure this, truly it's up to you. And once again, I'm going to just include a link to how you would think about setting up a mastermind group and how you go about doing it in the show notes. Again, those are going to be at artofprocurement.com/15. So I hope those provided some insight into your questions and maybe gave you a little bit of direction into how about thinking about solving those questions and those issues that you have. I'm also really interested in what other listeners think. So please, if you have any perspective on this, and I would love to hear from it, then probably the best place to do that is by going to the show notes. Again, artofprocurement.com/15, leaving comments in the field there, and then we can keep a tab on the comments and the ideas and thoughts that listeners leave. Alternatively, of course, you can contact me directly. I'm at peidson on Twitter, or by email, which is peidson, Pideson, @procurechange.com. Okay, well, thanks for listening. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will talk to you again next week.